Welcome to Leap into Livestream. I'm going to do things a little bit differently today. You'll notice I'm not at my podcast station if you are watching. It sounds a little different if you're listening. That's because I'm just introducing an incredible podcast that I was a part of just a few weeks ago. It is Spree Digest out of Denmark. And in that podcast, I shared some of my top tips for brands who are looking to start in this space, some of the biggest mistakes that I see, and also some pretty incredible data to share with you. So with the permission of Jens and Corey, enjoy the Spree Digest here on Leap into Livestream.
The reason we always love having you is because you do have this really extensive background in media, and you've kind of followed it through to where we are now and what we're talking about with live shopping. So what we're really interested in hearing is just a little bit more about your background, and if you can tell us just how it led to this stage we're at now.
Are you basically saying that Don is like the OG?
I think that might be the appropriate scientific term. Yes.
That's good. That's good.
I don't know. Did I just age myself by doing this, guys?
No,
Great to have you back, Don. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's great to be back with you guys. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't self-describe myself as the OG, but I mean, maybe I certainly have a 360-degree view of what live shopping is, and much of that stems from my experience in TV home shopping. But before that, I worked in traditional broadcast, so I've been working in the media industry for, I guess, 25-ish years. I started off in traditional media, working on a show called Breakfast Television, which is the #1 morning show here in Canada, and transitioned to the world of TV home shopping. It happened to be the same company as my original kind of traditional media job, and just absolutely loved it. I loved the real time connection that we had with viewers, even though it's not quite as extensive as what you see with live shopping, because it really is a one-way conversation. But the idea that you can have conversations that convert, the idea that you would be this trusted advocate, just for me, was just an amazing experience. And then, fast forward to the last couple of years when I launched Live Selling School and really started to focus on that same concept of connection and conversations that convert to the modern technologies that we see today, which I think, honestly is even maybe not the scale of TV home shopping, but I love the fact that there legit is a two-way conversation because of what live shopping brings with that real-time advocacy and interaction.
What was the impetus for you to go from the TV shopping to the live shopping? Tell us about that story.
Well, so there's a twofold story. And I always think, the world brings you to where you should be. So the initial idea was my husband and I had moved from Vancouver to Ontario. So that kind of was the start of why I went into TV home shopping. The opportunity was there, not in Vancouver. But a couple of years ago, we moved back to Vancouver. And I wasn't quite ready to give up the TV home shopping yet because I really loved it. But I also knew it was going to bring me that added credibility and that opportunity while I was commuting to explore what my next stage was be. And I've always been somebody that would be thinking like, what's next? Even in my traditional media job, I was always working toward a performance coaching of people, how to be good on camera, how to communicate your message, public speaking confidence. And so while I was commuting, I was exploring what live shopping was. I think, Corey, you and I had conversations very, very early on while I was sitting in a hotel room in Mississauga, Ontario, and talking about what the potential was and doing research and realizing there was no one with the background that I had coming to the table, assisting platforms like Spree and the other ones that are out there, assisting brands and founders and influencers and ambassadors on what it means to actually connect and communicate through the screen while story selling. And so when I decided to go all in with my live selling school, creating my program, my signature HSH method, working one-on-one with brands, it came to the fact that I also saw that this was the future. And I know it's me talking a lot, but I got to tell you this funny story. So while I was commuting, and I don't know if I've told you this yet, Corey,
No.
but while I was doing the commuting, there was a digital conference that was going to be happening here in Vancouver. It actually did happen. It was the first of its kind here in Vancouver. It was called Social Pacific. and they were putting a call out for speakers. And I thought, gosh, this would be a great thing for me to speak at. I mean, I'm a Vancouver girl. People know me here. So there would be, a little bit of I'm going to say an attractiveness to have me as a speaker for this conference, potentially for a bit of a draw. And I titled it how to shop like a home shopping host. And this was meant to be like a 45-minute conversation with a bunch of digital marketers, maybe a couple of hundred digital marketers. So a great
Okay.
opportunity for me, but a good educational experience for them, because live shopping, as new as it still is now, it was even newer back then.
Right. Right.
And I I had to pull my name. The folks at my employer, they felt that this was potentially going to take, I'm not even joking. They thought that
Take
this
your
was going to
time.
hurt the home shopping business, and the
Mm.
fact that I was still employed. They said, you're going to steal business from us. And I said, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm speaking to digital marketers, maybe that might represent a little boutique brand. I'm speaking to the Etsy sellers. Like, I'm not even thinking big at this point. I'm just thinking like, gosh,
No.
there's something here. And I thought to myself, wow, okay, if they're worried about it, I
Yeah.
must be onto something. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's when I
Good
started to
deal.
go all in.
Okay, well,
Okay.
what I'm kind of hearing there is that the home TV shopping might be a bit, I don't want to say anything too fragrant here, but if it's kind of going on the shelf a little bit, I'm curious, how do you think that this evolution that you're suggesting is expressing itself, going from the more traditional media, which for the longest time has been the more seen as the more legitimate way of
Well,
broadcasting, to what it is now?
if I could just add something real quick, so I grew up in the States, of course, and there are at least 34 home shopping channels, if probably even more. I don't know. But coming over to Europe, we're obviously based in Denmark. And where are you right now, Don? Are you still in Vancouver?
I'm in
Yeah,
Vancouver.
you're in
Yeah.
Vancouver, right? So the home shopping TV is not really a thing here.
Mm,
It's obviously bigger in the UK. So I think just the business context and the way that we've engaged with people on TV selling stuff is also very
mm,
different as well.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
think
back to the question. Yeah.
no, and so just to kind of address that, and Jen's, just to be clear, TV home shopping isn't going anywhere yet.
No.
It's
mm,
still billions and billions dollars industry. But without question, there is, through attrition, there will be an end to it, whether that's a dying of cable packages, because all of that, but also who is shopping. So
mm.
hey, I love TV home shopping, and by me sharing that story about the company I worked for feeling threatened, I still love that company and they still like me.
When
So
was
this
this,
is
Don? When did
this
this
was
happen?
this was 2 years ago, almost to the day. It was it was 2 years ago, and that's when I kind of thought, okay, I've got to think of the future here. So when when we think about what that progression is going to look like, it's interesting to me. So knowing that TV home shopping is not dying this very second, but at some point it is. It just is. And the how we know that is, look at what HSN did. HSN shut down their headquarters. Now keep in mind, HSN, so Home Shopping Network, and
Mm,
QVC, they've been the same company for a while now. A lot of people don't
right.
know that. Um, but when they shut down the HSN headquarters and decided that they're moving everything over to QVC. They'll still operate, I think, as visually separate entities. But what does that mean? There's redundancies, all of that. So, obviously we're going to move the conversation to live shopping. But here's the thing: HSN has posted a job for a chief growth officer whose sole focus is social media and live shopping. So, what
Yep.
does that tell you?
Well, it tells you what we're also witnessing here is that we're actually we've been dating, we've been talking to a lot of these traditional TV shopping companies, and they are very interested in tapping into the social media side of things because they can see that their demographics are maybe, like you said, attrition. They're dying. So what are these next growth channels, revenues for us? And obviously it's social media. They need to grow their markets as well. So that's not a big surprise to us here at Spree.
Yeah, but and I know exactly who you're talking about, and they've had some success doing live shopping with Spree, but I also believe that they have yet to fully integrate what the true potential is. I think there's,
Mm.
as with any legacy brand, there's always the thought that we must do it kind of the same, but we're going to integrate a bit of modern. And in my view, it would be great for brands that are out there that think they know what it should look like, live
Mm.
shopping, to really open up what the possibility is, because the brands, the home shopping networks that are working with you, for instance, Corey and Jen's, or the brands that are working with me with whatever platform we're using, I think that they're not even experiencing what the full potential. But I do know that they know that it's not just about whether or not the traditional TV home shopping model will die, or let's take it to the brands that might be watching right now, just regular brick and mortar, that they may not be able to have their traditional brick and mortar store anymore, or that they are only direct to consumer. I think they're realizing, why wouldn't we capture
Mm.
everybody? Like, that's what it's about. So, like, let's take away the doom and gloom of businesses shutting down and all that. Let's think about what the idea is. Why wouldn't you capture as many people as you can and give them that glimpse into who you are as a brand, who you are as a person, a founder, whatever it is? Like, that to me is the secret sauce right here.
Yep.
I kind of want to unfold that a little bit, Dawn, because now you're saying that some of these more traditional media, when they're trying to adapt to the digital platforms, they might be doing things in an archaic way. So, what would you say are the ways that they could adapt to this more current platform? What are some of the traits in, let's say, hosting or the just the sheer execution of it that you think could help them along?
Yeah, I think it's understanding that you really only know what's going to work by trying different things. And so while it might be comfortable to, so let's take a brand that's been on TV home shopping but still has their own brand. So let's use that
Yeah.
as an example, because that might be more relatable to anyone listening. Not everyone's on, you know, is on TV home shopping. But let's take a brand that you're familiar with, that you go to their store or you've gone to their .com, but you also happen to watch them on TV home shopping. I think that that brand that is used to that electronic retailing, that platform of connection through the screen, they think that you always have to have the table. They think you always have to have the host. They think you always have to roll in some B-roll. For anyone listening, that's background video, or all of that. And I'm not saying that pulling up, let's say, a skincare brand, pulling up a clinical or before and after isn't impactful. Of course it is, but it doesn't have to be quite as structured. And I think if you embrace it, so I'll give you an example. One of my clients is a fashion brand out of Toronto. And the very first show, as part of my Bring Your Brand to Live offer, is that I kind of take people from choosing a platform right through training them to doing, if they want, because I don't need to buy myself a job on air. I've done lots of on air, but this is what makes people comfortable. So I did the first show with her where, I'm on camera with her and I'm helping her
Co-host.
through
Right.
correct co-host situation. And but the second one, because the goal is to empower brands to do this themselves, because I want people to know that using platforms like Spree and anything that's out there, like, it's not as complex as you think it is, but you do,
Right.
there's always a bit of a learning curve. So on the second one, she did it by herself. And I heard her say, because I was watching, because I'm like a proud mama, right? Like the contract with me is done, but I can't let you go, right? Like, I got to still cheer you on because I am. And she had said, oh gosh, I've got to figure out how we can get, a picture. Someone sent me a picture of them wearing our travel collection, on a trip to Spain or whatever. And so I thought, okay, the platform she was using didn't have the ability to just roll in a picture. And my
Right.
thought was, I'm not sure we need to get that complex. So I sent her a note after and I said, why don't you get your iPad, like the one that's different, the different technology than what you're broadcasting on? Because of course, I know not everyone is watching, but most of the time you're broadcasting using your phone,
Your
using
phone. Right.
right, correct. So I said, why don't you throw on a few of the pictures that your customers have sent you, and when you want to show them, you get your assistant or you have it off to the side, and why don't you pull it up and say, here's Dawn, and that's not a picture of me, but here's Dawn wearing our thing. And all you have to do is hold up that additional piece of technology, an additional phone. I mean, we could go real old school and print it off, but I don't think we need to do that. The point is it can be a little bit more raw like that. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's like, the traditional home shopper or the traditional broadcast would say, let's roll in viz,
What-
let's roll in
Yeah.
video. You don't need to do that.
No, but it's funny to think about, Don, like the way that we think about live shopping. This is probably not universal again because the backgrounds are different, but it's almost as though TV home shopping has defined the blueprint, the model, and a lot of people when they think live shopping, oh, I have to take the blueprint from home shopping TV. And what I hear you saying is that's not necessarily the case. There's lots of things that we can learn from them, but this is an opportunity to maybe, for lack of a better expression, reinvent the wheel a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, listen, let's be honest. My background is TV home shopping. My method is called the HSH method, which is the home shopping host method, which is a great beginning framework because we look to the past to figure out what works for the future. If you
Sure.
listen to music, how much music do we listen today that is sampled from music of the past,
It's
right?
derivative.
So
Yeah,
we're not,
derivative.
yeah, so we're not and listen, my business is teaching you what I know because of my $30 million plus in sales, right? Like,
Let me
and
ask you this:
what
what
I,
do people need to unlearn? What do they need to unlearn to really flourish at live shopping?
yeah, I think you know what it is? It's you need to unlearn the idea that everything has to be perfect. Okay.
Love that.
So the perfection is what's holding people up. However, the preparation is something that you need to integrate, and I don't want to be, the old lady that goes like the young generation these days, they don't. But the reason why things look spontaneous and fun when you're watching the clips that you guys send out on Spree or that you see when you're scrolling on your social media, the reason it looks fun is because of the prep that's been involved. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't be spontaneous and have fun and still do a live shopping event, but I would ask the question, what is your goal? If you're
Mm.
doing regular social media and I want to do a fun little video of Dawn making a coffee, right? Don's making a coffee. We're gonna have fun. We're gonna have a little coffee talk, little conversation. That we can get some great traction on that. We can get some great views. I made coffee with a pour over the other day, and I've got 1,000 views on there. That's not 1,000 sales. So
No.
what are we going to do? How are we planning our show? So we'll use the word strategy, which sounds very formal, I know, but it is that strategy, that plan that will allow when Dawn makes that coffee with that pour over to sell, let's say 1,000 people watching. Can we get 300 people buying that pour over? To buy that pour over, we're talking about the little cone, right? The little cone
Yeah.
with filter in it. Just if anyone's listening, going, "What the heck's a pour over? I got an
There's lots.
espresso."
I think. Yeah, especially in Northern Europe, there's lots of coffee nerds out there. So I
Yeah.
think that's what we're talking
Hey,
about.
I media trained a coffee roaster, and he said the pour over is one of the best ways to get the flavor and the notes out of it.
It
So
is.
so
It
if
is.
I was so guys, this is not like this frivolous conversation you and I are having. I would have done that research if I want to sell pour over coffees, and I would know that in a
Mm.
conversation with Brian Turco, I learned that this is one of the best ways to get the notes out of the coffee, even better than a French press. French press is number two, but let me sell you this $5 pour over. And my planning is still Dawn making coffee, but my
Yeah.
planning is going to share some of those tidbits. My planning is going to ensure that we have calls to action. My
Mm.
planning is Dawn sipping it and describing what
Yeah.
that coffee tastes like so that you can actually feel your oops, I'm knocking everything over. You can feel everything, tingling in your mouth, and that is what's going to let me maybe sell 300 maybe of those $5 pour overs as opposed to just Dawn making coffee.
Yeah, but Don, because you've also planned and you've prepped and you're comfortable with what you're doing, maybe that also allows for a little bit more spontaneity, a little bit more impromptu, because your compass is still pointing in the right direction, but you can deviate a little bit because you know what the overall journey looks like, right?
So it's funny because in knowing what we were talking about today, when we talk about the improving your presentation, how can you make sure that you get out of the presentation what you want to, and more importantly, that your listeners or your viewers do, right? Depending on how they're ingesting your information, because people listen as well. It was always the how do we get people back in the day. It was how do we get people back to the television screen when they're making Cheerios for
Mm.
their kids, right? And same with podcasts. Like, what makes people stop scrolling on their phone and listen? When you're doing live shopping, what makes someone pull you full screen instead of watching on the small screen. It's the, hey, come here, let me show you this. Come here, let me tell you this. But you're right, Corey. It's the preparation that creates almost this muscle memory. Like, I haven't looked at notes here. You and I are talking, we're asking questions. I'm listening and I know my topic so well. I know what I'm doing so well that I can answer everything. And so when you are prepped, which is why when we talk about the qualities of a great host, it is the authenticity, of course. And what does that mean, right? Truthfulness, being yourself. But the preparation is part of that authenticity, that muscle memory that creates a convincing conversation that converts so that you don't have to think about it. And that's why, Corey and Jens, we can have fun, because this sounds really serious, but the whole point is it's meant to be fun for the host. It's meant to be fun for the listener or viewer, and it's meant to be informative. And when you have that muscle memory that only stems from prep, that's when we start to see the difference in the numbers. And it is a bit more work on the front end. We all know that you got to learn the platform. It's not a huge learning curve. I've used Spree. It's very, very straightforward, but it's like learning anything. You got to learn it. And then once you start to go live and you start to do all your prep and make sure you understand what it takes to convert, it's quite easy, because then
Yeah.
you're just building, right? But you got to get that foundation going first.
Yeah. And that foundation is also going to build on your confidence as a host, because you'll know what to say. Even if you go off script, you're not worried that you're going to look stupid. And again, to your point that you made earlier, it's not about trying to achieve perfection. It's about trying to communicate value. Now, I want to shift the conversation a little bit, because we touched on this a little bit before. There is quite a difference between how the medium of home TV home shopping and live shopping is being operated in Europe versus Canada, where you're from. So I'm actually curious to hear a little bit more about how the live shopping space is evolving in Canada from your point of view.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, without question, and I'm sure you guys have felt the same as well, especially in the Western markets. Although you've been preaching live shopping for longer than me, and I've still been preaching it for 2 years, right? Which seems like an eternity for me to think of how much education we put out there to still be miles behind China, which will never catch up to China
Mm.
anyway. But without question, Gary Vaynerchuk preaching this is the monster and the must learn for brands in 2025. It's going to help their business thrive. That is significantly created a shift in the live shopping um, narrative, I guess, and the interest for it. So I think one of the biggest barriers maybe for brands that are thinking like, gosh, do I get in on live shopping? I'm hearing more about it. I think it's that idea of that it has to look like TV home shopping. And I think that's one of the barriers to it. But as far as, TV home shopping, the fact they're embracing live selling tells you miles. And for regular brick and mortar brands, and as Gary Vee likes to say, the small little shop, and he does this on CNBC, the small little shop, and does you're down home in the country or something. The fact that we all have the same tools, everybody has the same tools to sell. If we were selling something, we're all selling something. That's also my perspective. Even on this platform, on this visual podcast, even the audio podcast, all we need is a way for people to complete a purchase. This is live shopping. What we are doing right now is a version of live shopping. And so I think the transition of what brands are doing right now is figuring out how can they monetize essentially the content
Mm.
they're already creating.
Yep.
Mm.
No, that's a very, very valid point. And I think it's also, how do you monetize those millions of or hundreds of thousands of followers that you've been accumulating for the last 20 years, where you've traditionally just been driving them to a website where they often get lost. They don't remember what it was they were buying. They get distracted by the 4 or 5 other screens that they have around them. But how do you make those moments special by making them shoppable in situ, like in the moment? I completely agree with you, because what I try to tell people is that, sure, there's the Home Shopping Network, there's QVC, but with some of the capabilities and technology we have today, Spree included, brands and retailers can effectively have their own home shopping network and QVCs, right? And that can go directly out to their followers, but also by tapping into the algorithms that we have available through social media, you can instantly grow your audience, by orders of magnitude, which I think is incredible.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, obviously, the more social media following you have, the more success you're likely to have right out of the gate. But I'm working with brands right now that have just launched. So I recently did a live shopping event, and I trained the host and I worked the back end of the app just to help again get them onboarded. Although again, you can do all this yourself once you kind of understand what's involved. And she literally did a live shopping launch party for her brand.
That's
Now,
awesome.
and let me tell you, I was super impressed by how many people actually purchased and showed up. And that's with, like, I think she only has 100 followers on Instagram. Now if she had a, 100,000 followers, of course, that would have been even more impactful. But this is a new brand. And so what I loved about what she did, and because she's understanding this is a long-term thing, and this is what I'd like to make sure everybody knows, this is not let's go live and sort of see how it goes. No, it's let's incorporate this into our marketing plan, because think of it as marketing even before sales. I would like to highlight that this is a marketing channel that will have sales attached, and those sales will eventually grow. But like any marketing plan, you don't do it's not a one and done. But so what I love about this is, imagine back in the day, and for someone out there that's listening and watching that has a brick and mortar store, when you opened your store, what did you do? You had a grand opening party. How did you get people in there? Well, you put up flyers, you
Promoted it.
you told your friends, you called people on a
Right.
telephone, and you put an ad out, maybe, right? Maybe you did an ad. It's the same rules. And I know, Corey, you're a marketing guy. The same rules apply for this. But what I love is that this was a brand who went, I'm going to use this as a launch to my brand. And now we're getting ready to do her second show next week. And she
That's great.
knows it's going to grow, and she knows it's not always going to be a home run, but she's always going to benefit from the marketing and the halo effect.
That's great, because we've been talking about digital natives. Like my kids, for example, they're digital natives. They grew up with smartphones, so now we're kind of seeing the emergence of live shopping natives. So people who kind of start their businesses using live shopping, and I completely agree. It definitely should be seen as a marketing and a sales tool. The key thing here, though, is that it's incremental to the revenue that you're already generating. Plus, it can also drive higher footfall into your physical store if you do have a physical store. And here's the bonus. Once you get people on your website to actually complete the purchase that they made on live shopping, there's great opportunity to also upsell afterwards. So it's a win-win-win-win-win
Yeah,
situation.
I have to tell you, just to that point, Corey, my very first, my largest client was my first client, and that was Manitoba Mucklucks, and that's large, arguably, this is how you know it's live when I go arguably, and that's authenticity, kids. That's AI is not going to mess up like that. But the largest Indigenous brand in North America, and stems
What
out
do they
of
sell?
Canada,
What do they sell, Don?
Mucklucks and
What are
Indigenous.
those? Sorry.
So if you think of like the original winter boot, so if it,
Yeah.
we use the term indigenous here, maybe you use the
Yeah.
term Native American,
Yeah.
but so we're talking about the original foot, it's leather, maybe has fur, like all of it, but it's what you would see, yeah, the indigenous wear.
Okay.
So on their first event, and again, this is a large brand, and even them, they were a bit like, oh, how much do we promote this? What if it's not, what if it doesn't look the way we want? And of course, me going, come on, guys, like, your only way you're going to know is by knowing, and the only way you're going to sell is by telling people what they found. And we made lots of sales. But what was interesting, Corey, is that when they looked at the data after, because this is the important part, this is why it's not just a one and done. You have to look at the data, and then you evolve your strategy, and you figure out your perfect way. That's why I say there's not just one way.
Mm.
They had 600 new newsletter subscribers. And do you know what they said to me? They said they were absolutely amazed by the halo effect. The sales was one thing. Of course, they saw more traffic. Of course, of course, they saw more views on their social media replay than any, they had said they had highest engagement than any other social content outside of a new artist drop. And when I say that, meaning like the artist that does the beadwork and the design.
Right.
600 new newsletter subscribers. And what they loved about that is that they said for them, that's almost better than the sales, because now those people are in their funnel and they can
Yep.
keep selling to them.
Yep.
Mm.
Yep.
It totally goes back to what we were explaining. That you're building an ecosystem with this as a vehicle to just build your marketing and your sales even to grander levels.
Yeah,
But
we talk a lot about revenue. We talk a lot about deeper connections, but in many ways, it's also about building that community,
yeah,
right? I think that's important because it's not just one and done's in terms of customers
hmm
either. But I also think one of the reasons why people may want to join their newsletters because they've actually now they have a name, they have a face, they have a personality behind the brand, and they feel that deep human connection. Which I mean, not to get philosophical here, but I think in the day and age that we live in, we're kind of missing that.
yeah,
So that's one of the things that I'm mostly drawn to with live shopping is kind of bringing us back to the good old, even though it's through a screen, it's still that deeper human connection. And I kind of call it social shopping because most of the time you're doing it together with hundreds, if not thousands, of other people, and
mm,
I think that's kind of cool.
yeah,
Well, if you think about it, brands that have a brick and mortar, they've known the power of connection for this
Yep.
is why they did this. But imagine the D to C brands, the direct to consumer brands that have never really had that opportunity
No,
before.
it's all online.
What a great way to again show who you are. And I will say the flip side of that. So when we talk about why are we seeing maybe more interest in live shopping, I think it's because of this AI technology world, little bit of lack of trust, lots of scams. Am I getting the real deal, product wise and people wise? We are craving connection, and we can, I mean, gosh, if COVID taught us anything, it's that we can leverage technology to stay connected. And it's those connections and conversations that are going to convert. And I know this sounds like so business heavy and money, 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 but the reality is it is that trust and that advocacy and willingness to turn down a sale if it's not the right product for the right person that only cultivates trust and eventually will have that person shop from you because they know that you have their best interest. Yeah, we're all in the business of making money, of course we are, but that advocacy of a trusted host, not a fake host, not an
mm,
AI host, not a chat bot that is going, you know what, Corey, just I love the fact that that's that color of sweater that you're wearing, but imagine if you put that, maybe a different color, what that's going to do for the brightness of your complexion, your mood, and all of that. And all of a sudden, I'm selling a black turtleneck and I'm selling a red one, but you're going, oh gosh, well, Dawn's going to tell me which one is better for me. She's not trying to sell me both. She's not trying to
No,
sell me both. She's trying
no,
to sell me the one
especially
that's best.
especially when we're dealing with the so-called paradox of choice. Because I heard Scott Galloway talk about this the other day. He's like, effectively, we just want smarter people to make decisions for us. We don't want 25 different options or 25 different colors for things. It's like have somebody smarter to tell me what I should buy. I think that's something we need to remember sometimes. But also, like you said, a lot of these brands who were built, they started D2C. It's been really difficult to put a name and a face and a voice and a personality on them. So it's a great opportunity for them to do that with connecting with their customers through live shopping. I think that's great.
yeah. And Dawn, you're in the business of helping brands develop their hosts to make them more effective at communicating and building these connections that we're talking about. So if you had to kind of distill, I know it's maybe easier than it sounds, but distill some advice down to our listeners, what steps they could take to leap into live shopping and kind of propel their journey towards having hosts that are competent and know what they're doing in front of the camera. What would you say to them?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a few different ways with regard to who hosts. I think if you as a founder are able to be on camera, I think that is incredibly impactful. It just people love to see, the designer or the formulator, even if it's just some of the time, maybe you're the special attraction when we get to meet the founder. I think that's always incredibly impactful. There is a level of comfort on camera that you need to have because if you're my experience, someone who's uncomfortable on camera, you don't have to be perfect, but uncomfortable makes the audience uncomfortable.
Yep.
Mm,
And
Very.
when the audience is uncomfortable, they don't want to watch. I don't want to watch something that gives me the ick factor. It can be boring and all of that. So have a level of confidence. I would say also if it's not you, and that's okay as well. If you're like I don't, I am going to be a bad represent. find someone that is. It could be your second in command. It could be, I always used to say when I did media training for restaurants, it doesn't have to be the chef. It could literally be the dishwasher. If the dishwasher is the better advocate, like
Mm.
have the person that is the best on camera that's going to make people want to watch. So I would say get a level of camera confidence. How do you do that? Practice being on camera, even if it's not live. So plop up your phone, tell everybody what you had for breakfast, make a cup of coffee, practice that. I would say as well, when you're looking at, how are you going to execute this? Think about it. Do you want to co-host? Is that going to help you be more comfortable and let you be, if we want to use the term, be the star or the expert or whatever it is? Or consider having an influencer that is so ingrained in your brand, not somebody that is just like, let me find the followers and pay them. Have somebody that is a true advocate for your brand and that is going to research and do the things necessary to create a bond. So I was going to say convert the customer, but let's start with create a bond of trust and advocacy and entertainment, because we need to be entertained. And to the, start with that. And then of course, investigate. Maybe you're just doing a regular Facebook Live to start. Forget about, sorry to say it, but maybe you're not starting with a live shopping platform right now. Start with doing a Facebook Live and see what that feels like. When you get that traction and that engagement and you start to see, okay, now I want a pathway with the least amount of friction for my customer to buy, then you invest maybe in some of the other technology. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, warm up. I mean, I couldn't agree more. Warm up, grease the wheels, and then once you're ready to go, then because it's not as though, like you said, you're not going to pull out your phone, you're not going to go live from the very first moment, and you're not going to nail it. There is a slight learning curve there. I just want to go back to what you said before about being able to do this without enormous amount of followers. I think that's great. And also think that's really important for people to understand. You don't have to have 1 million followers to be successful because it's all relative. We recently had a company in Sweden. They only had 4,000 followers. Their first live, they had 1,000 people watching their first show. 4,000 followers, but they had 1,000 people on their show. So with proper promotion, with proper preparation done, then you can actually do well. So that's important. Important message for everybody listening today.
Yeah, and I think just you don't, everything is new because it's new, and then it becomes less new and it becomes more possibly routine, but hopefully not stagnant. And it just becomes something that you look forward to doing. We make it sometimes sound like it's a lot of work at the beginning. And there's always the setup and little bit of the learning curve. How do I use Spree? How do I, create a pathway to purchase in my pitch, right? As a host. But once you do that, you get so promoting preparation and then you get to play. And that's the fun part. And it's all of that that creates a really engaging experience for a person watching. I would say just another piece of advice too, because I know there's lots of, there in the States, there's TikTok Shop. In Canada, there's not TikTok Shop. So I would, and we know what happened with that 12-hour shutdown. I know brands that were just losing their mind
Freaking
because
out.
they put all their eggs into TikTok Shop. And
Yeah.
we still don't know what's going to happen with that. But what I would say is you can do TikTok Shop and live shopping, leveraging your
Not
own
a zero-sum
IP
game.
on your own
Nope. Not a
website. Your own
zero-sum game.
website can be your shopping channel. As an affiliate marketer, I'm working with your team right now and trying to figure out a way to do some stuff with a client of mine. But as an affiliate marketer, you can have your own mall. I mean, like it's nuts.
Yeah, and the thing is it requires some time to press pause and kind of rethink the game. Because for me, it kind of brings us back to the advent of social media. That was also, I hate this word, but it was kind of a disruptor. It's like, okay, this is the new way of doing things. And I feel live shopping is also one of those moments where, like, okay, now we actually not only have video, but we also have a way of making video shoppable, right? Without having to have 25 different jumping off points during the videos. And that's a really exciting moment in kind of the evolution of e-commerce, I think. But it does require people to actually maybe go up in the helicopter a little bit and think about, okay, how can we really leverage this so that we're driving incremental revenue? That's the thing. It's incremental revenue.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, the train is going. So
Mhm.
we've been in, I mean, I remember you and I talking 2 years ago, Corey, right? Like we talked about this future of retail. The future
Yeah.
is here. The train is going. Now listen, you don't have to hop on the train right now. There'll be another train coming, but it's going to be a different train.
Yeah.
And the people that are on the train now are already at the destination and already also because this is what's important as well. Even things have changed even since we started talking in the live
Yep.
shopping space. At the core, I mean, what I do is so not only do I help brands get them to live using the technology and training their hosts and all that, like of course, but at the core, what I teach is live selling. And live selling is relevant whether you're on TikTok, in person, applying for a job, on a podcast. We're talking about skills that allow you to communicate and sell yourself and or your products. And if you are a brand, you are a product. You as Don Chubay is a product. So I am live selling all you right now. So I teach a skill in that way. But you know, the people that are on the train right now are going to be the first to be able to adapt to whatever else happens. Things
Oh,
like
sure. Yeah.
AI,
Yeah.
all of that. But the people that are getting, it's not too late, right? And it's never going to be too late. But just remember, the longer you wait, all your competitors, and I don't want to put the fear and the FOMO, but this is reality. Everybody else, your competitors are ahead of you. They
Yep.
Yeah.
are. And so get on the train and dip a toe. Try not to keep one foot on the ground and the other in train because that could be painful. But, maybe you're not sitting in the first class yet. Maybe you're sitting more in the caboose. That's okay. Get on that train. You're still going to be on the way to the future.
Going thing.
I,
Yeah,
I think
absolutely. That's a great metaphor. I like that.
yeah, great call to action to end it on, because I think we could keep going for a long while, but I think we can wrap up the conversation and just let the audience know how they can reach you, Dawn, if they want to get your help with getting started in live shopping.
So there's a few different ways. I mean, live selling school is the easiest if you want to, take my online course, which is really created for ambassadors and influencers who want to learn my HSH method of live selling and my 8-step formula. Proven. I've sold over $30 million worth of product, but I've even had to shift, guys. Like Don Chubay, people are searching Don Chubay because Don Chubay does lots of things. So go to donchubay.com. From there, you'll learn if you need media training, on camera confidence coaching. Maybe you do want live selling, but donchubay.com, you're going to find everything you need to know and how I can help you in the various ways.
Cool. Love
Pretty
that.
cool.
Don't you, Bay?
donchubay.com.
If you're tracking your name, Don, then just expect that to explode. No, I'm sure you do. How often do you
I
Google
only just started that. I only just started that. I didn't even, I mean, this again, I've kind of figured a lot of things out as time goes on, and I get people that really help me in a lot of ways. And I just realized, oh, I should put a pixel on my web.
Yeah, you can track. You're probably trending if you go and do Google
Appa-
Trends. You put in your name.
apparently 9,000 people in the US searched my name last month. I
Yeah,
don't know.
apparently you're a thing, Don. I mean, that's awesome.
I
Good for you.
I'm famous in my own mind.